Hey, good morning. Saturday, August 19th. A beautiful day here, but also a day of a little sad because Katie will be leaving later today, going back to her home in McFarland, Wisconsin. But until that time, we'll talk a little bit and talk about some events that took place in California after we moved there. And one major event that took place in my life was in April of 1975. I think Grandma or Susan talked a little bit about it, but I was working for Burndy Corporation. I was in my 9th year working for the company. They had transferred us twice from Connecticut to Ohio to California, and it was not a good year for a lot of businesses that were. The country was in sort of a recession type of not as bad as what's happening now in our, and that's another thing too. When you don't spend just the phrase get what you need, not what you want for now, just because this inflation is still rampant. And anyway, I went into work, the usual. My work day was from like 8 to 5, and I was the manager of the office manager. Had like I think 2 girls, secretaries, and 2 young men that worked in the warehouse. We had a small warehouse where we had deliveries in the local deliveries in the area. Anyway, business was slow, and at the home office in Norwalk, Connecticut at the time, they were cutting back on employees. And I would think, and I always kind of thought to myself, and it had been going on for about a year, and I always thought to myself, well, I'm glad I'm not in the home office, because you never know, because middle management is like what I did. That's usually what they get, who they get rid of or cut back on hours and so forth. Anyway, it was a Friday morning, and I go into the office, and I see that the head man over our area of the office out of Norwalk was in our office, and I said hi to him and didn't know him that well. I knew of him, and he kind of, I don't know if he probably knew of me, but that was it. And went into my office and started checking what responsibilities I was going to have that day. And then they said, Joe, my boss, the sales manager in the California office, and a guy by the name of Bob, wanted to see me. I go, okay, nothing unusual. I go in the office, he shuts the door, and okay, so he shut the door. And long story short, I got my walking papers. Yes, I got laid off. And you know how, surprise, surprise, well, guess it was a surprise to me. And I was like, whoa, laid off. And right away I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm married, we have 5 children, and need the money, honey. And he had been new as a sales manager. He had only been here in our office. This guy Bob, he was from the Denver office, and he had only been with the company for a number of years. But only about 7 or 8 months. It wasn't even a full year that he was at our California office. So, I kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, and he started to tell me why, blah, blah, blah. And so I just, he gave me an envelope, and in that envelope was some severance pay, which was a blessing. I mean, as far as if you're going to lose your job, it helps to, over the short time that you're laid off, to help you. And so I just walked out of the office, and it was in the morning. It was like close to 10 o'clock, and that Herb Grossman was there, and I'm sure he was there to make sure that everything was said and done, because this guy Bob was new at doing this. I don't think he probably never laid anyone else off. Had to do that responsibility, but it was done, and probably within a half hour or so, I left. I said kind of goodbye to the girls and to the guys in the warehouse that I was leaving. They had no idea, and it was kind of like whoa, whoa, whoa. So the first thing I did was I got in the car, and I opened the envelope, and then I saw what the severance pay was, and it was a decent amount. And I better go to the bank. That's the first thing I had in my mind, was just to better deposit this puppy before someone hijacks me or something. So I went to the bank, and it was a nearby bank that our account was part. It was a branch of the bank that we were doing business with, and deposited the money. And got in the car, and then I had to drive about 45 minutes from Menlo Park to San Jose. It was a 20 miles plus, I think it was like 21 miles that every day, back and forth. And I just kind of remember, I don't know what, I was in shock. It was just like, whoa. It's like somebody just, I was like half awake or half coma or what, just in shock. And I'm thinking of Susan and the children, and of course I know I had to tell them. And got home and pull in the truck, and the car's not there. Susan, the car that she had, and Jimmy was home with her, and the rest of the children were in school. But so I got in the house, and I had a phone. I guess Susan. I didn't know. Couldn't call anyone because we didn't have cell phones back then. I think Susan called me. She had called the office, and they said that I was left, and she called home, and I answered the phone, and I had to tell her over the phone why I was home. And anyway, it was a tough time, but we made it. We're fine. Here we are. This was 40 years ago or whatever, and but that's something about me personally. And the other things I wanted to talk to you about personally for me, and while we were in California, is my teaching and my I was thinking of laying in bed last night, my coaching, personal responsibilities that I had, and we became members of North Valley Baptist Church, and we had a good relationship with the pastor and his family and other people in the church. We enjoyed going there. The children were able to, after a while, it was tough for them to make some personal changes in their lives, and so we had to also, but we felt we were doing the right thing. And I felt we were doing the right thing. And I got a call from the pastor one day, and he asked me if I wanted to work on staff, because he knew that I had gotten laid off, and I did have another job. I was working as a salesman, selling chemicals, and a very difficult type of sales job, very strenuous, tedious. And I wasn't happy with it, but I did it for about 4 months, 5 months, maybe longer. Anyway, this was in 1975, near the end of, I think, 1975. And he called and said, "Do you want to work on staff?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, let me think about it." And he talked to me some more, told me about what my responsibilities were. And basically, he called it maintenance. But, and I thought to myself, maintenance, okay, maintenance, but actually it was more a janitorial type responsibility, and the salary was decent. It wasn't, but I told him I'd talk to Susan and just pray about it, and we talked it over. And I was not happy at the job I was on, so that was, one thing to get out of the sales job that I had with this chemical company. So I accepted the position. I got the position. Worked as I used to call myself a surface engineer, and all that is a Greek name for a janitor. That's a joke. True story. True story though about getting the job and all that. And I did that for a while, and new people came on staff. The church was growing. They had just started a school. It was at the time, I don't think it was, I guess it did go all the way to high school, but it was just starting out, private Christian school. But I had no part. All I did was my responsibility at the school at this time was just to clean it. And then, I know. While we were in the church, we got they had the bus ministry, which they had like 7 or 8 buses that went around to the different areas in the Santa Clara area and basically picked up children. They could pick up adults to come to church, Sunday school, and that, bring them to church, and then take them home. And they were getting a bus. They wanted to start a bus route in not the Cooper. What was this town? Sunnyvale area. Thank you. That's Susan, my wife. Hi. Sunnyvale area to pick up children. So, pastor asked us if we wanted to take over a bus route, pick them up Sunday morning, or go around Saturday. A couple hours Saturday, checking to see if they were going to be who was going to come to church, and then Sunday pick them up and then drop them off. And so we accepted it. We did it. We went around. We picked up a lot of stories from the bus route that we could talk about also. But those are more they're good stories, and maybe eventually talk about it. But. Did that, and then was working on the bus route a couple of years, and then they needed a bus captain because the bus captain was leaving or something. Pastor asked me if I would be the bus captain, keep the route, but also have the bus be a bus captain over all the routes, and that would be responsible for the routes and also the route that we had in Sunnyvale, and I accepted it. And did that. It was busy weekends for us, but we thought it was the right thing to do, and we did the best we could. And then we talked a little bit about me helping the children with their studies and that, and they would always tell me about you should go, you should teach, Dad, you should teach. And it really started to kind of really let me think maybe I could to teach. Because when I was just getting out of high school, if I was going to go to college, I put down teaching, to teach, to get a teaching degree. And but I never took the tests. I didn't take the SAT test to ever go any further. And this goes back now when I met just getting out of the service and getting out of high school, and then what I was going to do, and I ended up going into the service. But I thought, I guess how old I am. I'm 43. It's 1983. So I got laid off in 1975 from that job I had, and then 8 years later, we're still in California, by the way. We talk, we pray. The children are an encouragement to me, and Susan was an encouragement too, to go to Bible college. And Katie and Tracy and Susie and Joe, except for Jimmy at the time, Joey was just getting out of high school, to go to Maranatha, which is in Wisconsin. Here we are in California. Sold the house, moved, all of us, went to Wisconsin, Maranatha. Katie was, by this time, Katie had already graduated. Katie was married, 82, got married. And Tracy was already started, I think, at Maranatha 1 year or something like that. And Susie was going to go, and Joey, Jimmy, and Jimmy would go to the elementary school there. I think that's how. Anyway, we moved out to Wisconsin. 4 years later, 1987, I got my degree. Had to work my way through the college, and Susan, of course, working with a nursing job, and the children helping by them doing work to get the tuitions. Tuition was not, as it is today, but still you were responsible, of course, financially. And in 1987, at the age of 47, I got my diploma and graduated. During this time, just before I graduated, Pastor Trieber came out for a visit. He was on the board of the Maranatha College, and he said, Joe, come back to California and you have a teaching job. And I thought, wow, that sounded pretty good. But at the same time, a pastor from this area here in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, who was a graduate of, no, he wasn't a graduate of Maranatha, but anyway, he came out to our college, and he was kind of recruiting at the same time. So I let him know that I would be interested. This is before Pastor Trieber talked to me, but that I definitely would be interested, just because of the fact it was near my hometown, and I hadn't been home Pennsylvania, since 1961 when we got, or no, not 19. Let's see, when did we? When I got out of the service, 1961, and find out that maybe I could get a job nearby. And I got kind of excited about it, really did. I can remember thinking about, whoa, if I get hired here, this will be cool, be living near my hometown. And anyway, the fella, he interviewed me, talked to me, and he called me, I don't know how, later on, but he offered me the job at the Christian school in the Lehigh Valley. And I can remember getting off the phone, and I was home alone, and at the time when he called me, and I can remember going, "Oh, whoa!" Really, just getting real excited about this, And I said, "Yeah, that's good. That's a good idea, And a month later or something like that, come to find out. I'm not a gossiper. I don't like to spread rumors or anything. I didn't tell you the guy's name, but he left the church. Here he was messing with the funds, and the church had the school and everything. And I don't know if they were gonna, what they were gonna do with the school, but I just got no. The church has a problem, and I don't want to be part of the problem. So I just forgot about calling them back or anything after I heard about this pastor getting relieved. He got laid off, whatever. So children, we're back square one as far as a job. Ended up going back to California after our graduation, my graduation, and working at, Jimmy came with us. He still had a year to go in high school, but I told him he could stay at Maranatha and finish there, but he didn't want to. He wanted to come back to California, and we're fine. So the three of us, I think it was like a July 4th weekend, somewhere around there in 1987, we moved to California. Stayed for a month or so at my aunt's place, which she was kind enough to give us, because we thought we had an apartment for us, and that apartment got rented out before they could save it. So anyway, that's what I was told. And in 1987, I started teaching my first class. And by the way, my first class that I taught was a senior class, and guess who was in the class? Jimmy. So here was father teaching, son, or maybe son teaching. I don't know if he was paying attention. No, he was paying attention. He was a good student. So I taught at the school for 6 years, from 87 to 93. And this is when I basically got involved with coaching, because they started to build sports teams, soccer and baseball, and I think that was it initially, and I became the baseball coach, and I'm trying to remember, but my first year there, I'm not sure. Basketball was also one of the sports, but I don't believe I coached. I want to make sure, because we came. This is when I came back. Yeah. I had coached when I was before we moved to Wisconsin, and then when I was working at Maranatha, I coached the basketball team. But then we weren't in the signed up with the state of California, with the other high schools. But I would call around and get games for the boys, and as exhibition, whatever you want to call it, for these schools, and a lot of them were kind enough, or they needed some games, and we filled in a gap that they had time that they could play. So I did that in basketball when I was still working on staff at North Valley. Then coming back to North Valley, they were beginning to get into the regular regimentation of the state tournaments, or in this their responsibilities as a team, and so I coached basketball, and I think that was it. And then I coached baseball. I coached those two, but I enjoyed coaching. It was just a lot of fun, and with the boys, just and Jimmy, I had the opportunity to coach both Joey earlier at Maranatha, and then when I came back the second time, Jimmy, his senior year, he was on our soccer team and our basketball team, and Jimmy was a good athlete. Joey was too, but with Jimmy, it was his senior year, and in soccer, we won it all in soccer. We had a very good soccer team. I remember the players, and Jimmy was one of the top scorers, and in the league and on the team. But that was awesome for me. I just like coaching. And on baseball, we did pretty good in baseball. We didn't go all the way, but we played hard, and the boys played, and they enjoyed it. Yeah, I guess so. That's teaching and coaching in a short little. I like that. And then another thing with sport, I'm a very sports-minded person. When we were living in Ohio, I to get extra money, I started umpiring, and I umpired 1 or 2 games in Ohio. Then when we moved to California in 73 to 83 is when I did a lot of umpiring. Okay, yeah. Besides coaching, which was good. It was good money, and it was fun to do. I like doing that, so that was fun. A lot of umpiring stories I could tell you too. Yeah. Well, they're all going through my mind now, and I don't want to keep. There's a lot to. Where are we now? 19. All right. Let me tell you one quick story about when I was umpiring in California. I did some baseball umpiring in high school, not too much, but what I ended up doing, the majority of games were adult softball games, played at night, had to be at night because of my other regular job. And we played at the park in San Jose, the adult park, and Diamonds, and they were already, regular league, and you were part of the league, and you had games on a couple nights a week or one night a week, and sometimes you umpired maybe 2 games that night, depending on what the schedule was, and maybe sometimes 3, I think. One night in the summertime, it was summertime, and warm night, San Jose, California. Summers are pretty, they're pleasant, but they can be warm too also. And I'm umpiring the bases, okay? And the 2 teams playing, one of them was a Latino team, okay, made up the majority were made up of Mexicans, okay? That was their team. And the other team was a company team made up of, different adults, different, whatever. Anyway, I'm umpiring the bases, and this big Mexican fellow's up to the plate. And everything, the game's going good. It's like middle of the game, and nothing unusual happening. And he hits a ground ball to, I think, the shortstop, and I get in position to call the play, safe or out. And he's running down the line, and as he's running down the line, shortstop gets the ground ball, and he throws to the first baseman. And just as he's throwing to the first baseman, the runner hits him. Gives him an elbow. And he was out. I called him out, but I could see that he gave him the elbow. And I saw that, and I went, to the guy. I told him, well, you're out of the game, And he starts cussing at me, and he's walking towards me, and of course, big guy, So I'm saying, you're out of the game. You saw what you did, and and then the other team, they were, yeah, we saw, and they, but they're just adding more fuel, like when they're saying this, But he's walking towards me, and while he's walking towards me, and I said, you're out. I'm walking backwards. I had my good clothes on. No, but anyway. Get to the backstop. I walk all the way down to the backstop, and of course there's other people in the booth, the score and all that. And somebody came out. The guy's coach. The coach came out, and before he laid a hand on him, I don't know if he was gonna, but he sure looked like they stopped him, and okay, but the other people reinforced what I said, and that, he's out. You're out of the game, and we're going to write you up. So, and he had to leave the dugout. He wasn't allowed to stay in the dugout. But he goes, and this is a park. Anyway, he leaves the dugout and goes about 5 feet away from the diamond, and he's yelling at me from out, yeah, good for that. And I just ignored him. Same game. All right, it's nighttime, and I'm doing the bases, and next thing I hear something, hey, look at that! Whoa, look at you! And I turn around, and just as I turned around to the outfield, everyone's starting to look in the outfield, and I'm like, what's going on, And I turn around and I look in the outfield, and running from center field to right field as fast as he could go was a streaker. Right between the outfielders and and the infield is this guy streaking. I mean, that was the only. I mean, he didn't stop, and had never, but he was running like, just right. And in those days, back in those days, if you were around that time, that was kind of a fad in a lot of places. That people, I don't know, but I mean that was another part of the same game. Went from like a fist fight or a possible fight, an inning or two earlier to a guy running with no clothes on across the outfield.
Good story.
That was funny. Okay, so my umpiring experiences, but I umpired and I enjoyed it. It was fun, a lot of fun. Okay, we're teaching. It's 1983, and we moved to Maranatha. I get my degree 1987. We come back to California. Susan gets work. Do you work? I guess some work right away. I guess I'm not sure, but I started working in September of '87. My first class, Jimmy was in there, and then coached some more. Most of if they had a coaching record, how they have the Hall of Fame for the best record, for coaches, I'm trying to get them to have a Hall of Fame for the worst coaches. No. And my record would be right up there in the top. But it was a young school, but we had fun, We got to one game, and we're playing. This was in Florida. I think it was in Florida, yeah. Well, I could talk about that. I was soccer coach of the Christian school that I taught at in Florida when we moved from California to Florida, and we were a young team, but we were also part of the Florida state teams and schedule. We were in the mix with the smaller schools, and we had games, scheduled games. You had to be there, but we were allowed to have seventh graders, junior high, eighth graders could play on our team because we were a new team. That was one of the quote perks. I don't know if it was a perk because here's a seventh grader looking up to a senior in the field. They're going, oh my God, oh God, guy's gonna sit on ours. Anyway, this one school was Highland Christian School, and they were a good school. They were a good team, and they were a school that was there for quite a while. And we go down there to play them. And I have just 11 guys, we're a small school. And I told everyone to play by the net. I said, don't go to your regular position. Just spread out and kind of put a ring around the net so they could have a hard time getting in. Go up about 20 yards from the goal, 25 yards, and just 11 years, just kind of stand there, just keep running around, just try, because they were big and they were good, and they tried to do it, and it wasn't too bad. I mean, mercy rule was 11 goals, I think, and so I mean, at halftime we were only down by like 8 goals, it was 8-0. Anyway, it was 8 or 9-0 at halftime, and the boys, they're playing hard, but they're just not big enough and mature, old enough, And so at halftime, I said to them, "Hey boys, I said you're playing hard, you're playing the hard you can." I said, "We can go home now if you want," because it was an away game. We were playing down there. I said, "We can go home now, if you want," and no questions asked, no nothing, if you just want to go, we'll stop at McDonald's or something. And when I said that, it was almost like, oh yeah, anytime you mention food, sports tents. But they looked at me and they go, We want to play. We want to play. And I'll never forget that because the coach is quitting, but the players aren't. It's usually the other way around, where the coach gets fired. I said, okay. I said, let's see what we can do, you know. And we get out there, and the score was 8 or 9-0. And within about 2 minutes, it was 11-0. And that was the mercy rule. That's when they called the game. You know, they called the game. But but the boys stayed together, and after we moved to, they became one of the top athletic grades in the school's history. You know, these boys that I had that were 7th, 8th graders and that, I mean, they became juniors and seniors, and they played well. But we had moved to where did we move to? Florida, or no, to Pennsylvania. I don't know where we moved. Anyway, when we left Florida, I guess.
Yeah.
This time, yes.
Yeah, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, when we moved in 93, or 01.
Right.
So anyway, there's a couple of stories with the teaching and the coaching, and we should move on. The year is, what's the year? We're